Hey everyone, it's Types. I'm going to be covering some stuff not Scarlet and Violet now because this was a video I wanted to get out a little while ago, but I just quite have the time, and it's the bracket fights video with all the pre-rotation, or not all the, but most of the pre-rotation Vs, and then we also have V maxes that we're going to be taking a look at in a bracket fight style tournament. And it's really interesting. Honestly, so they're not exactly in order. It's kind of messy. Bracket Fights is not as refined as Teammaker, which isn't even that refined to begin with, but it's still a pretty cool program, especially for very casual stuff. So pretty much the idea here is that I'm going to be seeing, because I posted polls for all these on my channel, and actually if you're interested in seeing a different Bracket Fights tournament, I'd be interested in hearing that down below, or if you're just not interested in seeing that, I'm certainly fine to hear that as well. But this is with all the Vs that have rotated, include from all the D block Pokemon. And we're going to start off here with Indeedee V versus Zarude V, and I'm also going to provide my feedback in addition to what you said. So Indeedee V won this one. I feel like that's like fine. They're both kind of whatever. Neither of them saw too much play. Indeedee saw more play, so that's probably why it won. It was pretty close as well. But you know, Indeedee taking this one's fair. Zarude is kind of a cool card, but it never really saw play, I don't think. So that's unfortunate, but fine. Oh, okay. So I'm using matchup mode. I decided I'm gonna like stop using matchup mode because it's kind of bad. It doesn't work very well. Okay. I'm just gonna skip around now because I had to reset the bracket. It got all like messy, but I'll skip around. So Ditto versus Phalanx is actually the first one I have here. And yeah, so Ditto won this one. Phalanx is kind of cool, but it was pretty underpowered. No way I can zoom in on it, but Ditto are really cool. Won by quite a bit, and it's just more versatile. Saw play, really fun. It's kind of like a toolbox style deck if you want to play it like that. It saw a lot of it saw playing Arceus toolbox decks. It's just a really cool card. That if you hadn't played, I'm sorry for you. But it was pretty cool, and I'm pretty sure it rotated. I actually didn't double check that, but I'm pretty sure. Next up we have Cramorant versus Boltund down the other side of the bracket. But yeah, the winner here was Boltund in a close one. Honestly, these are some of the coolest Pokemon that we lost. They both saw competitive play. Boltund V, I actually made a video on how it's so well designed that could have influenced it. Also, sorry if it's cropped weird. Unfortunately, there's not too much I can do about that. But yeah, so Boltund V, super cool, very well balanced and versatile. Cramorant V also pretty versatile. It did not see as much play, I think. Saw play with Welder, Boltund saw play with Pikarom. Those are pretty much the only places those two were played. Honestly, they're both very fun, very balanced, very versatile Pokemon that came up short for a lot of the time, but were also very strong for some of it. So Boltund here, it didn't dominate this match, but it's cool, and I think it's not bad that it deserves to win here. Next up, the other two Lightning Pokemon, Tapu Koko V versus Vikavolt V. Most people said Vikavolt. Tapu Koko doesn't see that much play. I'm honestly a little bit surprised because Vikavolt's super annoying to play against, but it saw play, so that's why it won. Honestly, I kind of like Tapu Koko. It's cool, but it's just not that strong. It does pre-retreat, and it has some okay attacks, but that's about it. Zacian versus Zamazenta. Winning by landslide is Zacian. It's the good old sword doggo. One of the most broken cards ever, but also, well, I don't know if I can say that, but it's very strong. I saw a lot of top tier play. Zamazenta is also kind of annoying. Zacian was very strong, but yeah, I don't know. People like Luke Metal Zacian Zamazenta as a deck. People liked, which is more focused on Zacian. So I'll play in Duraludon VMAX. So I'll play with ADP. I personally enjoyed the ADP Zacian deck because it was so strong and a little bit versatile. I feel like a lot of people didn't like that, but apparently enough people did to give it the win here. Now, in another really interesting one, Wailord V versus Ninetales V in the top right here. Honestly, I didn't know really which was going to win. I personally think Ninetales is interesting in its versatility, but it's also pretty weak. Versus Wailord V, which is very thick, but not super strong, but just like a fun Pokemon, and people just voted for that and that's fair enough. You know, they're actually, it's a cool card. It never saw too much play. Honestly, I'd say Ninetales V saw more play. It didn't see a ton, but it was good with Welder, good with honestly ADP as well. I ran it in that, but Warlord V is very fun and very silly. Next up is I just did that one. Next up is Eldegoss versus Double V. Double V is pretty generic and underwhelming. It saw play, but it wasn't that cool. Eldegoss V, really unique in its ability to recover supporters, allowing you to use it like during late game as almost like a Tapu Lele GX style card to search any supporter, but also use it just as an attacker in control decks, or if it's a very fun card. And I think in terms of support Pokemon, it checks all the boxes except for being overpowered. It was I'd say balanced. It was a bit underwhelming and a bit weak, but it saw top tier play. It's fun to use. It's strategic to use. You can have an attack with it. It's not great to attack with. I think it just checks all the boxes of a really cool Pokemon. It's almost like Shaman EX, except toned down a ton and more defensive as opposed to aggressive. And then lastly, the insane matchup between Crobat V and Sableye V. Oh, I want to see. Did this one get flipped? Yeah, so keep in mind, some of these I had posted, and then I obviously moved on to the next round, and then it came back to it a while later. So in this, I had Sableye V winning this matchup. So actually, Crobat V, it says won here. It was very close, though. At the time, Sableye won, and this was like the first one I posted. Actually, no, it was not. It was the last one I posted in the first set of Vs. But anyways, Sableye V had winning here. At the time, it looks like it flipped back to Crobat. Both are really cool, though. Sableye V is very powerful, very strong, very fun, very silly. Crobat V is just a staple card. I think Sableye V has a lot more interesting aspects. I don't think I made a video on it. But it's really cool. Crobat's just solid. It's very similar to Eldegoss. It's like a staple support Pokemon, except it's better. Less interesting, but better. So, people said Crobat won. As I said before, they said Sableye won. It kind of flipped. So, Sableye moving on here. Now onto the next round with Ditto versus Vikavolt V here. And actually, I'll talk about that one. We have Vikavolt winning because it saw more play rate. Ditto honestly isn't the most interesting card in the world. It was kind of cool. It allowed for some fun things, but in its own right, it didn't actually do much. So Vikavolt actually doing something people liked. And then another very dominant matchup for Zacian. Really, Indeedee is just... It's probably the most boring Pokemon to move on, with like a very boring round 1 matchup. So Zacian just sweeping there completely, just as such a staple Pokemon in the meta. Out of all the Pokemon rotating, it's probably the most iconic. So we have Zacian moving on, and then we also see we have Wailord versus Boltund, the closest matchup we've seen. This one actually again flipped between the time of now, which is actually the time of recording. So anything that's being recorded right now and but when the video goes up or the time you're watching this, it might be different anyways. But I had Boltund V barely winning this matchup. It's so close, right? Boltund's cool, kind of fell off. Wailord's just kind of fun, silly. So they're so different in terms of balance and like fun to play. Not necessarily fun to play, but in terms of balance and basic design, Boltund V is way better. But Wailord V is just so fun, so silly. So I'd say Boltund, and the people did say Boltund as it switched to Wailord. So, you know, I can see either one there. They're so different. The fact that Wailord has a lot of love behind it's really neat. It's very silly, but it's very fun. And Pokemon really nailed that on the head with like a fun Pokemon. And then Eldegoss V versus Sableye V. This one was... okay, Sableye won here, right? Eldegoss is a bit tame in terms of what it does, and it didn't really see much play. Honestly, Sableye V saw more competitive play than Eldegoss V. And even just like in terms of casual play, Sableye definitely saw more because it's so fun. And now we have the top 4. And I guess... like Sableye is just cool. I probably should have made a video on it, but I feel like it's too late now. I mean, I did play it some in some videos. It's really Pokemon that has like a great place in my heart as well as a part of that very important Lost Box deck. But now on to the top 4, the semis. So we have Zacian versus Vikavolt. We see Zacian again winning this one. Because it's Zacian, right? Zacian's really cool. And Michael kinda isn't fun to play against. So Zacian just won. It didn't win by a landslide, as we see that the top, like, when you get higher. I was gonna say the results are closer. That's not necessarily true, but anyway, we see Zacian winning here. Now Boltund V versus Sableye V. Sableye, here we see sweeps quite easily. Boltund's cool. Sableye is just a cooler version of Boltund. I mean, they're very different, but Sableye has explosive potential, has this really interesting first attack. Boltund's cool, well balanced and well designed, but in terms of fun factor, it lets you down a little bit from time to time. In terms of strategy, it's really good, but Sableye, you can just hit these really big numbers and you just have a massive smile on your face, just like Sableye. And then moving into grand finals, this one honestly wasn't super close. It was Zacian, right? Zacian is, in this Pokemon, winning makes a ton of sense, right? Zacian V, it's just the poster child of the Sword and Shield like era. And for the video games as well, Zacian is the Pokemon. So the fact that Zacian won it just makes a lot of sense. I personally like Sableye more than Zacian, but Zacian winning, that's very fair. I like that, and it feels really nice. But now we're going to talk about the VMAXs, which were not actually that developed during the first D-Block era, but we're still going to talk about them because they're an impactful part of the Sword and Shield era as a whole. The 3 years of Pokemon, and for some people, certain cards like Eternatus defined the era for them. So, yeah. And speaking of the first matchup, Eternatus versus Salamence, Eternatus is going to win here, because let's be honest, who played Salamence? I actually. I have a very depressing loss. I was playing in a big tournament. It didn't end up like hurting me that much. I still moved on to the second day, but I ran into a Salamence stack. I completely bricked. They moneyed. It was just very unfortunate. But yeah, Salamence is kind of whatever. It's a spread based stack, but it's not that fun. Never really saw too much play. And honestly, not worth playing that much. Eternatus moving on is just a very very notable Pokemon, unlike Salamence, was just kind of ignored. I think they were in the same set, but yeah. And two other Pokemon from the same set we have from Vivid Voltage, Orbital VMAX and Togekiss VMAX. And so, oh, and actually, I should probably give a shout out to Ember Power. I believe it was Ember Power for suggesting that it would be these Pokemon to do next, because yeah, Ember Power for saying that he wanted Colossal VMAX and Orbital VMAX. Sorry, I'm looking back and forth on my phone so I can see the results here. But yeah, super cool Pokemon here, and these are like the VMAX are kind of forgotten but kind of remembered as well. We see Orbital winning here. Togekiss is kind of whatever. I personally thought it was going to be very good, honestly, with Sharon's Care, being able to loop and just be essentially invincible, but it's not very fun. Control's not super fun to play against. Orbital's just really cool. This fun ability to ping. Also, getting pinged by it feels kind of bad, but also it doesn't do that much damage, so you're still fine. Honestly, Orbital VMAX is just a super fun Pokemon VMAX to play with. Now we have a funky matchup with Colossal VMAX versus Alchemy VMAX, and so here it says Colossal VMAX won. I don't remember if Colossal VMAX actually ended up winning at the time. This one was super close. Looks like, yeah, Colossal VMAX did end up winning this match. Colossal VMAX was kind of hyped coming out of the Vivid Voltage set, but really it was very strange. It was super good in Japan, and the regions ruled by the Pokemon Company, not the Pokemon Company International, so that includes, I don't know, other Asian countries, but not all Asian countries. I don't know the exact details, but people would just refer to it as Japan. So, yeah, Colossal was very good there, but that was because they had certain cards that we did not have that rotated, which is kind of funny, so it kind of flopped. But on the same side, Alchemy also wasn't that good. I did see play with Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. It was actually very toxic in that deck, so I guess people didn't like it. It was kind of fun on its own, but very weak. So Colossal winning here makes sense. Again, as I said, the VMAXs from this era were not super strong. But with Colossal moving on, it's the VMAX that people think of probably when they think of Vivid Voltage. Next we have, and these are actually in the the right order now, I think, because for some reason Bracket Fights was okay with, it was just okay doing the VMAXs, but it was not okay with the Vs. I don't know why. But we see that it's going to be Dhelmise VMAX versus Pikachu VMAX. This is not the 3000 HP Pikachu VMAX. This is like the 300 HP Pikachu VMAX. And it lost because, let's be honest, no one played this card. It wasn't very, not no one, but it wasn't very good. It's kind of like a bad version of Eternatus VMAX. It is Pikachu, but that wasn't enough to carry it to a win over Dhelmise with a 69% win rate against Pikachu. Dhelmise, that's just honest. Okay, I think this is in English, the card text here. Oh, it disappeared. But it's very hard to tell because the image quality is kind of low. It's kind of weird how Bracket Fights does it, but it's fine. So Dhelmise winning. It's a really cool card. I know some people who really like Dhelmise VMAX. It's pretty versatile, pretty strong. A bit underwhelming, not the most powerful card, but you know, it's pretty cool. So certainly that, like, seeing making a win, it makes sense. So we do see that like it's gonna win here, and so we actually see like it also came out in a mini set, which is kind of weird. So, but that is gonna move on to the next round. And then we also see Dragapult VMAX versus Cinderace VMAX. No one really played Cinderace VMAX. Honestly, it wasn't bad. It was kind of fun, but it wasn't super strong either. Dragapult VMAX making an obvious win here because it's cool. Some people don't like playing against it. I've certainly found some frustration, but it was a very solid deck nonetheless. So it certainly deserves to move on here, and it's an obvious winner as well. Now, Ditto VMAX versus Malamar VMAX. Ditto VMAX is just so cool. Very silly. We saw, I think, Ditto V winning as well. It looks like it's going to face a similar fate, losing in the next round, but that's fine. Ditto VMAX being just a very silly card. It's the same attack actually as a Ninetales V, where you copy your opponent's attack. Versus Malamar VMAX, kind of toxic as like a control deck and not super strong either. Honestly, Arceus Malamar VMAX was very solid, but it didn't see that much play. It was kind of weird to use, and as I said, just kind of unfun. Ditto VMAX was really fun, even though it wasn't that good. Next up, we have a very close matchup, and I have here Lapras VMAX winning versus Stonjourner VMAX, but that's at the time. It is very close. Let's see which one won at the time. It looks like Lapras VMAX here did win. Very close though, right? Stonjourner VMAX is definitely better, but super toxic, super unfun to play against. As like probably one of the least fun decks I've ever played against. Yeah, Lapras VMAX is like super generic. It was pretty underwhelming. It was the first VMAX though, and probably, you know, it was okay. I saw a little play with Frostmoth, and that's about it. And if you played with Frostmoth, or played it when Frostmoth was legal, which was a long time, you knew that it didn't really see any play ever. So it was not a very good deck, but at least it's not Stonjourner, so it won. And I think that's fair. And then we see, unfortunately, I in the next matchup, Centiskorch VMAX versus Inteleon VMAX. I'm all for Inteleon because it's super cool, but Centiskorch won. Centiskorch saw a lot of top tier play. The really defining VMAX from this era were Centiskorch VMAX, Eternatus VMAX, and Dragapult VMAX. They're all moving on because they're so defining. Inteleon VMAX is so fun, but like I played Inteleon. It was such a good time. It was moderately simple, but also you need to be careful where you place your damage because that could change things a lot. It was very fun, but unfortunately it does not move on to the next round. Now that we move on to Eternatus VMAX versus Orbeetle VMAX, I've been talking up Eternatus. I personally like Orbeetle more, but like hold up. As I said, the results got weird here. Actually, at the time, Orbeetle won. So yeah, there we go. So Orbeetle won at the time. Eternatus VMAX actually ended up pulling it out at the end, but too late. Eternatus saw play, a lot more play than Orbeetle, but Orbeetle's way cooler, so Orbeetle actually won this round, because who doesn't like Orbeetle, right? It's very fun. Eternatus is kind of not fun. It was kind of, like, marked as the toxic Pokemon of the Sword and Shield era, so, yeah, Orbeetle making it out of that one, luckily. And then we see Dhelmise versus Coalossal. Obviously, Dhelmise. Coalossal was well, it was a colossal flop. I don't think there's any other way of putting that. So, yeah, Colossal pretty underwhelming, but Dhelmise, as I said, versatile, powerful, and honestly very similar to Orbeetle. And move on to Dragapult versus Ditto. Dragapult. What is Bracket Fights doing? Okay, Dragapult obviously moving on is a very powerful, very, also sorry for any background noise. It's a very powerful, versatile Pokemon in one of the defining Pokemon of the era that was also cool, unlike Eternatus, which is not as cool. So we see that moving on, and Ditto just being not super played. And then Lapras versus Centiskorch. Centiskorch moves on. They're honestly very similar, except Centiskorch was more fun, versatile, powerful, and it just way more play. Lapras saw almost no play. Centiskorch saw so much for a bunch of sets. Yeah, honestly, it's like one of the best VMAXs we've seen. It's not actually thought of as that way, but it's very, very good. Now we're moving on to the semifinals. And so we have Orbeetle versus Dhelmise, the battle of the grass Pokemon. We see Orbeetle moving on because it's just cool, right? I'm not a big fan of Dhelmise. It's kind of fun. It's not the most fun. Orbeetle is super fun, though. Its ability is super fun. Its attack's kind of fun. You can do big damage. You can just kind of do whatever. You can heal. You can switch around. It is very fun. So we see that Orbeetle VMAX is going to win this one, bringing it home for Vivid Voltage. But now on the other side of the semis bracket, we see Dragapult versus Centiskorch. No, what is happening? Dragapult wins. Dragapult's just cool. Centiskorch isn't. I could get why people kind of like Centiskorch, but Dragapult better. It was better. It was more fun. There's just no reason to play Centiskorch. I mean, they're very different decks, but Dragapult's just really, really cool. And it's one of the more fondly remembered VMAXs that we're going to see rotate here. Probably the most because it sticks out in a lot of people's minds. Some people hate it, but I think it definitely deserves to win here. And then we see the grand finals. Wow, this is close. Okay, I don't know if this flipped since we saw it, but we see Dragapult VMAX taking the crown as the greatest VMAX rotating. I'm very much fine with that. It was better than Orbeetle. And they're very similar decks. I have to go with Dragapult as well for my pick because, it's really, really fun. And it's very, it's very, good. It's versatile, unlike Orbeetle, which actually is just not very good. It doesn't hit very hard if your opponent doesn't attach absurd amounts of energy, and it's just not great. It can be very fun. I played it a solid chunk, but I played Dragapult more, especially with Inteleon ping. You have these awesome damage counter combos. Dragapult, super cool. So, gonna be saying like that. I'll open up the other one as well if this. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so Zacian and Dragapult, the two kings of Pokemon rotating. I'm very happy with that, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Honestly, sorry for the recording issues, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other ideas for brackets, please feel free to comment them down below. I hope you enjoyed. As always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.